Hello, Yva here with yvaloveearts, and I'm really excited to be sharing my very first design team video for ColourArte. And today I'll be showing you how I made this painting of a painted bunting with the Twinkling H2O's. And the first step is to pencil in the bird lightly. I'm working off of a photo I found online, and I'll put a link to that in the description below. But basically you'll just want to use a really light touch. You don't want to make your lines too dark, otherwise they may show through in your painting later. And this doesn't need to be highly detailed. I really just want to get the outline and where I'm going to be placing my bird so that I can prepare for the next step, in which I'll be using some masking fluid so that I can start work on the background. I'm working on a watercolor board that I picked up at Tuesday morning. I'm not sure exactly the quality of this watercolor paper, but we will find out how it works as we go. Alright, the drawing is done, and the next step is to apply our masking fluid, and this is by Winsor Newton. And I'm just going to use a brush and apply it liberally all over the bird and the stump or stick that he's sitting on. And once you're done applying the masking fluid, you'll need to step away and let it dry completely. And you can see I dropped a little piece over by the beak there. That's no problem. Once it's dry, I'll just use my adhesive remover to remove it. And then I'll be ready for my next step, which is to apply a wash of water over the background. And I'm also taking care not to wet the edges because I want to kind of leave a white border. It doesn't have to be perfect, which is why I'm not taping it off. I'm just kind of wanting to create an organic, kind of free looking border. And here I'm applying my sky blue and bluegrass Twinkling H2O's to the background with lots of water. And oops, you remember how I wanted to keep that border white? Well, I accidentally dropped some, so I'm picking it up with a clean towel, somewhat clean towel. And it dripped down the side too, of course, so that's okay. That just makes it mine. And then you'll just want to allow this background to dry, and then we will grab a stencil and the radiant gel in Stargazer and a palette knife, and we'll apply this to the background. And you know, I was trying to be careful and not get it on the white border, but of course I did. So I'm going to go ahead and wipe that up with a clean towel. And it doesn't come off completely, but I'm okay with that. And I wish you could see how beautiful and shimmery this is in real life. I'm going to try and give you a little idea of it there. But the dimension is awesome with the Radiant Gels. I just love it. And now it's time to remove the masking. So I'm taking my Adhesive Remover and just working it gently. See, this is the fun part. Just pull it off and reveal the beautiful white, which we're going to fill in. Using the masking fluid allows you to create a seamless background, and it also protects that white paper, so when we apply the color in this next step, it's going to be bright and beautiful and really show off the color of these gorgeous paints in the Twinkling H2O's. So when I removed the masking, it pulled off some of the pencil with it. So I'm going back in with my pencil here to draw some of those details back in. If you take a look at the photo that I'm using as a reference, you'll notice that there are highlights on the eye, on the beak, and on the feet. And so I'm going to be applying masking fluid to those areas again, so when I paint I can retain that bright white of the paper. And once again, once we're done putting this on, we'll need to allow this to dry completely. So much of watercoloring is patience, because everything is done in layers and you really need to allow things to dry completely before you move on, so that you don't get colors that are running together. And then I'm starting here on coloring in the head. And I'm using Ocean Wave in the Twinkling H2O's, and I'm using small, short strokes so that I can mimic the feathers of the bird. And I pretty much do this over the entire bird. Next, I'm painting the legs and feet with Blue Flame. And you can see this if you look at the photograph. It's a black, but it's got some color in it, and most blacks do. When you look at them, they'll be either a blue or purple. There's colors that are reflected in the black. So I'm just putting this down as a base color, and I'll come back with a black mixture later on top of it. And then I'm adding some Blue Flame to the feathers and tail section as well here. Now ColourArte has over 200 colors in their line, and believe me, I want all of them, but I don't have them yet. So since I don't have all the colors I want, I'm going to mix some to create the colors I need. And here I'm creating a deep red that I'm going to be using for the shading on the bird in a little while. But first I'm going to paint the body with Love Struck, and this is a beautiful red. The micas in these paints are just gorgeous. wish you could see them. If you have not played with these paints, then I highly recommend them. I've never come across anything like them, and they're just such great quality. The pigment load in these paints are just amazing and fun to play with, and you know, you can't see it in the video. You really have to see it in real life to really appreciate just how shimmery and gorgeous these are. And now I'll bring in that deep red mixture to add some shading. And there's also a small red ring around the eye, so I'm just using some Love Struck to color that in. And now I will paint in the yellow on the back with some Sunburst. And that blue is dry, so I can get right up next to it and overlap it even. Now there are a lot of different colors on this bird's wings, so I'll need to be careful when I'm changing colors to make sure that each one has dried. So even though I'm going and painting different colors right here, I'm leaving a little bit in between them until they dry completely. Then I can go in and fill that in later. So I'm going to go ahead and mix some black, and I started with some Blue Flame, added some Plum Crazy, and then some Fern, and I just kind of go back in between all of these colors, adding each one until I get the color that I want. And I'm going to use this color for the eye, beak, and legs and feet, and also some shading. I'm just testing it on a piece of paper there, and I said, yeah, that looks good, so we'll go with that. And I can just go ahead and color the eye in completely. Remember, I do have the masking fluid on there, so it will have that little glint of the white in the eye when I remove it. And it's also on the beak and parts of the feet. So I'm just going to go in and paint these in. And part of the feathers between the beak and the eye are dark, so I'm going to go ahead and carry that in, and I created some little freckle-like looking feathers around the face there. And oops, I used too much. Don't do that, but it's okay. I can come back in and fix that later once it's dry. So I'm just going to go ahead and paint in the legs and feet and try not to cry too much about my oopsie. Now I'll go back over to the wing area and work on that section. I added some ocean wave, and now I'm adding some love struck. There's lots of colors in that wing section. Going to extend the Irish mist, make it larger right there. And I'm going to take some of the yellow or sunburst and bluegrass, and I'm just filling in those areas that I didn't get to earlier since they were still wet. Didn't want them butting up against each other and bleeding together. And take some of the blue flame and add some more layers to the head so you can take this darker blue and really get some more texture. And again, I'm using those short strokes and I'm going in the direction that the feathers would grow. And as you know, watercolor dries a little bit lighter, so when you go in with more layers, those colors will become deeper and brighter and more beautiful. And now it's time to paint the brown in the stump that the bird is sitting on. And I don't have browns, so I made my own. And as most of you know, it's usually pretty easy to make brown. You mix your complementary colors. Those are colors that are opposite of each other on the color wheel. So you've got your purples and yellows will make brown, reds and greens will make brown, blues and oranges will make brown. So you don't have to use the exact colors that I did to create your browns. Just use what you've got. Most of the time when we're not trying to make mud, we do, so just play around mixing colors and I guarantee you'll be able to make some browns. And of course, ColourArte carries a lovely selection of browns that you can just buy, and I certainly have them on my wish list. I just haven't made it to them yet, but I will shortly. Adding some blue grass to the Irish mist now that the wing is dry, as well as some ocean wave in this area by the head. And I will also take that black mixture that I made earlier and add that to the shading underneath the wing and in between some of these feathers here. And I'll also add it to the legs and underneath the body and along the side where it's a little darker, just to give it some more definition. And now I'll go back and fix that little oopsie I had earlier by adding in some more sky blue and blue grass and just deepening and darkening that background. It's a great way to cover up some mistakes. And of course, now that the Radiant Gel circles are dry, I don't have to really worry about them. I can just paint right over them and they act like a resist. So I'll just be able to use a napkin to dry them off and pick up the excess watercolor that's on top of them once I'm done painting in this background. And I really like the way making the background darker like this allowed those circles to kind of fall into the background more. When there was more contrast, they stood out more. So, you know, that mistake was a blessing in disguise. And now it's time to remove the masking and touch up the beak area with some ocean wave. And then I decided that the highlights on the beak and legs were too white. The white in the eye was just fine, but I added some of a light wash of that black mixture to the beak and feet just to tone them down a bit. Now I'll go back and add some Irish mist on top again, just creating some more depth and more layers. It's really just touching up what I've already have now. You can see the photograph there on my phone, and I use that for reference as I'm painting. I wish I could do this from my head, but I can't, so most of the time that I'm painting like this, I'm using a photograph as reference. Take that black mixture I had and define the beak a little more. And that wraps it up. I'll try to show you a little more of the shimmer here. And it's just gorgeous. I'm really happy with the way this turned out. I hope you enjoyed it. Give me a thumbs up if you did, and make sure to check out all the wonderfully talented artists on the ColourArte blog and the ColourArte YouTube channel. Thanks again!